Like we might be heading back to the subject of the brain and how it works and consciousness, and we covered this pretty good a few months back, but probably worth revisiting, and to give me an opportunity to argue with some of these people who post comments who obviously didn't see the older videos, and they make some point about how no, scientists have demonstrated that emotion is part of thinking. Well, yeah, I've never argued anything else. The brain is an integrated device. It does two things: creates sensations and good and bad feelings, and gives us this capacity to reason. That's another feature of it. So it's one brain, but it's doing different things and for different purposes. And I would argue that the different things evolved in stages. But the whole thing, Matt's going to try to argue that somehow consciousness exists outside of the reality of a nervous system, and that's just nonsense. I think, I think that's a 99.99% sure nonsense. There's no consciousness without nerves, okay, and probably chains of nerves is how the system started. It was like having strings in an organism's body, so the eyes or the head or the mouth could keep track of what the ass was doing, kind of idea. There's an obvious logic to organisms developing a sort of integration of their parts. So one part wasn't doing one thing while another part was doing something counterproductive to what the other part was doing. There had to be some organization of the parts as little microbes got more and more complex in their behavior. It just seems inevitable that some capacity to organize those parts would develop, and on came the nervous system. And it's the brain is, we can understand the simple senses. I think we can theorize that pain is an illusion in the sense that we could cut our hand, and the pain isn't where we cut ourselves. The pain is created by our brain. It's our brain's reaction to a stimulus going down a nerve. A wire has been energized, a switch pulled in a way, and the brain reacts to that information and decides what it's going to do. And it has choices, and we can sort of get that idea, because if we cut our finger off nice and cleanly or in some way, we might not feel anything for a little while. I mean, it might just be a, whoa, that doesn't look good. But we're not going to feel it, because the brain hasn't decided that giving you pain is of any purpose, because it doesn't know what the fuck has just happened. Probably it's trying to figure out, oh my god, did he just cut his finger off? It just doesn't know yet. And pain doesn't really start until it gets to the idea of, well, I've got a wound to heal, and so now I'm going to start giving you pain because I don't want you to fuck up, where I'm trying to heal this wound. So we can see things like that. We can sort of surmise what the purpose, or how the brain is reacting and why it's reacting specific ways, and how that is helpful to our survival. And let's remember that this brain thing is just another tool used to enhance the survival of a frigging organism that is at its roots a reproducing molecule, and that's the game. And so in a way, I would look at the brain and say, so let's divide it into functions. I mean, there's the function of feelings, pain and pleasure used to motivate, and that's one part of the brain. Another part of the brain is this reasoning capacity, this ability to store information, store memories, and to somehow organize them or filter them into concepts, and then associate those concepts. And so then we're able to articulate whole sentences and paragraphs kind of coherently. Most of it makes sense. I mean, I'm not consciously aware of how it's made that arrangement. It's just the arrangement becomes apparent when I open my mouth and the right fucking words fly out. It's not really a conscious activity, but it creates what ends up being our consciousness, so it's sort of important to the subject. Because our consciousness is basically a slice of our brain. It's a place where all the ins go and where it creates another in. So in a sense, you have to concede the existence of this sixth sense, and the sixth sense is just another ball of nerves, just another pile of wires, like a leg or an arm or something else, another pile of wires that's allowed to influence the plane of our existence in the sense of our consciousness and its functionality. It's a place where, yeah, the memories are stored, where the information is filtered, where the associations are created. But it's probably not, there's still something else that goes on in that mechanism. So I did want to get to one argument that was, people keep raising this stuff that I had answered previously because of this discussion about emotions and thinking. And I've argued that, yeah, the emotion is, feelings was probably the first brain, was something that just felt. The first nerves were probably just about creating a sensation or something that could be reacted to, the trigger, and then it found this mechanism of the illusion, the capacity to create a feeling, and once that was created, then you could have the creation of a thought process, because it's only through using a feeling, a validating feeling, a yes or a no, a good and a bad. It's only with the presence of that mechanism that you can validate or create a filter that'll actually work. So the only way to really have a rational mind or a reasoning capacity is you have to have a feeling to validate good logic and bad logic, good filtering and bad filtering.
In a way that has to exist for an intellect to function. It has to be some mechanism that makes those decisions that allows the filter to function, let's just put it that way. So I certainly can see the role that feelings play in thinking, but they don't play any direct role in the sense of how I've been talking about it, which is we have conditioned preferences and desires that should have absolutely nothing to do with our reasoning. We should not be contriving or rationalizing in our logical mind what we want, because that's not part of the equation, or what we like, or what we think is cute. Those things are imposed upon us and are not scrutinized first to see if they are logical or reasonable. They're just something imposed, and they really shouldn't play a part in how we intellectually arrange or model the world or define reality. So anyway, I don't get lost in that subject. But like I said, a lot of this has been gone over before, but it's good to go back over some of it. I really think it's important just to realize that, yeah, it's just where this brain came from and what its purpose was, and that's all. It served a purpose. It created an ability for organisms to react based on individual experience. It basically allowed organisms to learn how to manipulate their environment, and that's the important part. Feelings, that's what feelings allow. That's what it allows to take place, and it allows to create this innate motivation that isn't programmed, that isn't stagnant. It's just a vague desire. So instead of an organism just being completely tied to a regiment of needing certain triggers to attack or to eat, it just created a perception of need or want and desire that the organism itself could make judgments about when is the right time to attack, or it wouldn't be a static programming that would be consistent for every circumstance and for every organism. So now it gives an organism so much more adaptability. This idea of pain and pleasure, or the good and the bad, and I would sort of argue that the bad part was probably the first part. That was what came first. I mean, the organism found a way to, just react in that visceral, reflexive way, to run away, to curl up, to react in some substantial and quick way based on some stimulus. And once that became a conscious reality, that was a feeling and not just a reflexive reaction, the brain could use that negative in little bits. So in a sense, I would argue that desire is basically made out of a very subtle misery. it's a very slight misery, and that pleasure or satisfaction is basically relieving that misery. It's like a subtle tension. It's a subtle, so subtle that it almost doesn't arise to a full conscious burden, but it exists. And by creating that level, it's almost like a level of noise that we become accustomed to, in a sense. And we derive pleasure by all of a sudden clearing the noise, clearing the fog. And that's where we get our moments of pleasure and satisfaction. And so that's the brain ended up using that as another tool. So it could push and pull an organism through their lives with this pain and pleasure mechanism. But that's the bottom line, is we are being pushed and pulled, and we're being manipulated and controlled by a reproducing molecule. I mean, that's our creator. That's our origins.